Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nic and Joe podcast with me, Joe, and our friend from the other side of the pond, Nick. How are you doing this week?
Hey, I'm doing really good. It's my birthday today, which is exciting. I'm the big 3-1. And I have some pretty exciting news. I took Snack Daddy off the market as of Tuesday.
Whoa, hang on a minute. What does that mean, Nick?
We went and did the whole marry thing. We got married. Our original wedding date was actually for August 28th of this year. And with everything going on, that got canceled. So we went to the courthouse.
Congratulations.
and did the whole thing. Thank you. Thank you.
How do you feel? Everything's different, right? No.
That's the thing. It doesn't really change the day to day much. It's exciting for sure. It's definitely exciting. So it's really nice. It's really cool. But
so you've, as it's your birthday as well, I presume you bought some cake for everybody to enjoy.
Actually, I am getting ice cream tonight, which I'm very excited about. We're going to get ice cream and play some games. I don't know what we're going to do. Probably a bunch of World of Warcraft. Actually, Snack Daddy's birthday gift to me.
Oh, yeah.
This bad boy.
Whoa.
Which I'm very excited about. I've been using a gamepad forever, and I really wanted like the new one. It has more keys. It's kind of like curved inwards, which is really ergonomic.
Yeah.
It's just really nice. So we've been playing World of Warcraft with my new birthday gift, which is very fun.
That's awesome. I was actually thinking about I'm probably going to get one of those just because it's like where you play, like if you're playing with WASD, like on the keyboard and stuff, like it's probably further out than like where you'd normally have your keyboard, right? Like I'd have it to the left, I guess, and that would be more comfortable. And obviously it's made for that, and there's no extra garbage that you don't need. So yeah, I'm probably going to invest in one of those. But that's a great birthday gift. I'd be super stoked for one of those for sure.
Definitely, I recommend it to everyone. I mean, I think they're awesome. I think they're the only way to play, especially if you play MMOs, because you have so many hotkeys. I've been using one. I don't even know for how many years now, and it's just, I really recommend it.
Okay,
10 out of 10.
Very nice. So this week in the gaming world as a whole, the big news is that Xbox are launching 2 different versions of their console, and they put a price on both of them, one at $299 and one at $499. And there's not a lot of difference in just the processing power, but there's more storage in the more expensive one, and it's capable of producing better graphics. But from what we've spoken about before, Nick, I feel like Xbox are really, really blowing Sony out the water here, and we've still heard nothing. Really about a price from Sony, and we already know that the Xbox. So there's the X and the S, right? The S is the cheaper one, and people are saying that the S is going to be cheaper than the S is going to be as powerful as the PS5.
Honestly, I'm really upset. I'm actually very upset with this news, because even though I'm so excited about it, I think it's awesome what Xbox is doing. Like, I need Sony to get on their level. Yeah. Because I'm very excited for some of the games that are coming to PlayStation, in particular Ratchet and Clank and Little Big Planet. And I know Snack Daddy loves the Final Fantasy series. Yeah. And so like, I feel like we're going to have to get one. I have to play the new Little Big Planet. Like I have to. And so the fact that they aren't on par with what we're seeing from Xbox, it hurts my soul, because I want them to do something about this. I want them to, compete with them, to maybe have like a lower price point PlayStation, because that would be perfect for me. I only really want it for 3 games. And so I'm excited about the Xbox thing, but also I'm like, Sony, please, for the love of God, step it up. Bring your A game.
I mean, the big thing about the Xbox X is it's going to be pumping out 4K at 60 frames a second, right? Which in the console world is absolutely huge. The S is 1440 at 60 frames a second. And now, from the research I've done and what I know, 1440 is more than enough, especially if you're playing like on a monitor. Like, for me, it's more about frame rate. In fact, no, the X is going to push it to 150 frames or whatever it is, 140 frames or whatever. But it's just like, it seems like the rumors were that they thought that the PS5 is going to be $399. I don't know about the difference between the digital and the disc version, but I just feel like when they come out with this price, it's got to be a massive mic drop, because Xbox have come out and said, it's going to be $500 or it's going to be $300. So Christmas time comes around, $300 for the kids. That's probably what they're spending on them most Christmases. And, people who are older and buy their own consoles, it's like, well, it's $500. I'm going to have it for 5, 6, 7 years. Of course, I'm going to pay $500. They won't even think about that. I really don't know where that leaves Sony. Also, there was something I saw. I don't know if this is just this was on the Xbox UK Facebook page. Actually, they are doing they're doing like a deal where you get Xbox Game Pass, Xbox Live, Xbox X, and they're doing it for like a monthly cost for a certain amount of time. So like £25, I think, or something, or whatever it was. Obviously, it's a few years, but it's like you're just gonna get like, so people don't even need all that money, spare money in their pocket to be able to buy this thing. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what Sony come up with to try and counter that, because at the minute, I got to say, like, because I'll probably only buy one of the two, I got to say that I'd probably sway to Xbox, because I've never picked one single console exclusively. And it will mean I have to wait when the Final Fantasy remakes come out, but I can live with that because I played the original. So yeah, I think that's the way that I'll be swinging at the moment.
Yeah. I'm definitely leaning towards PlayStation, but honestly, it's only because of those games. It's only because of Ratchet and Clank and Little Big Planet. Like, Little Big Planet really does hold a very special place in my heart. Yeah. And so I'm really hoping that they can up their game, because I already kind of know, like, okay, I'm probably going to go PlayStation. Yeah. So I'm like, please, like, make me feel good about this decision.
Well, you don't know.
Help me feel better about that.
They might just come out with something special, but that's been the major headlines like of the week. There's nothing really anything else major to talk about. I don't think, not that I've seen, unless you've seen anything, Nick. I don't know.
Well, there is the Nintendo, the Mario 35-year anniversary.
There is, yeah. This is it's a big deal, but at the same time, it's a big deal for like really massive Nintendo fans, or like people who like Nintendo. I don't know how much of a hook it is for other people, and it's not a new game. And obviously, the Switch, the Switch has sold like since lockdown and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm super excited, and apparently it's already the second biggest selling game of the year after Animal Crossing. Wow. Yeah, but I mean, the choice hasn't been amazing this year. We've had Animal Crossing, Xenoblade Chronicles, Hyrule Legends, which is like the old Dynasty Warriors games made by the same studio, but that's like it's kind of first party, but it's not. And I'm just wondering what Nintendo are doing at the minute, because but I guess if they're selling consoles, then. But then the other big rumor that's come out actually on the back of that is that Nintendo have been telling developers to make their games 4K compliant, because it looks like there's gonna be an updated Switch on the horizon.
Well, that's some mixed feelings. So I guess I am excited about that. Honestly, Snack Daddy and I were talking about it earlier this week. We have gotten the most use out of the Switch than any other console that we've owned. Yeah. Like, that is the one that we go to. And I mean, I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing. And I've definitely been looking for those updates. Like, I want more content for the Switch. Especially Animal Crossing, I really want a huge fall update to come. Also, speaking of Animal Crossing, I will say one of my villagers threw me a surprise birthday party today, and it was the cutest thing. Seriously, I melted. It was the cutest thing ever. But yeah, I'm hoping for more updates to Animal Crossing. I'm excited about, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was Bowser something in the 35 anniversary. Do you know what I'm talking about?
So it's a the Mario 3D World is being ported to Switch, and it's an add-on to that. And actually, they are adding multiplayer into that as well.
Yes, I'm very excited for that. That looks, anything Snack Daddy and I can play together.
Yeah, that looks really good. And then, of course, there's the Mario 35 Battle Royale, which is it's the original Mario game, but it's going to be like the Tetris style Battle Royale, and you drop enemies and stuff into other people's. That should be fun.
I was actually wondering if you were going to play that. I was like, is Joe going to get on that?
Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt. And so it's given me, as a streamer, it's given me with the release of so if you don't know, they're re-releasing Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy from the N64, GameCube, and the Nintendo Wii, respectively. They are porting them to the Switch and giving them a HD lick of paint, basically. And there's a lot of people who haven't played those games. Now, as a streamer, obviously, it's going to be in HD. So that's the biggest thing. Because when you play some of these old games, they don't look fantastic.
Yeah. Although I'm curious how that will affect speed running. Because I enjoy watching speed runs. Yes. I don't know why. They're a lot of fun. And I know that specific games sometimes have these little minor differences, which wouldn't really matter to the average person, but to speedrunners, that's really going to change things. Are we going to see speedrunners playing the old version and the new version? There's going to be two speedruns of the same game.
Yeah, so I was thinking literally the same thing about speedruns and possibly doing some myself. So I used to do a Super Mario World 96 exit speedrun. And the site, everyone uses speedrun.com for the that's there's no sort of real official, but that's the one that everyone uses. That's accepted as in the community as the site for all the speedrun records. So I uploaded a few of those there. I think I got 181 in the world or something like that. But you chose your platform underneath, and it made no difference to where you went in the charts, because I did it on emulator, I did it on the SNES Classic, and I've also done it on the Switch. You can do it on the Switch now as well, and you just pick. But yeah, there's probably subtle differences, and I don't know, with 64, for instance. So 64, these aren't necessarily straight ports, they've had a lick of paint and stuff. I don't know whether they've been messing about with the controls, because Mario 64 handled really differently, because it was on that original 64 pad with the weird analog stick. It worked great with that analog stick, but no analog stick's been like that since. So when I played it on the Wii U as just a straight port, it didn't handle very well. Now, so I'll be interested to see what the handling is like with these games. But if you're a Mario fan, Nintendo fan, it is a massive deal, and because a lot of people have been waiting for announcements as well. So yeah, it is a big deal. I didn't know whether to talk about it, because obviously I don't want to be like that Nintendo guy who's just just creaming over Nintendo all the time. But I am that guy. But I know you like Nintendo as well, Nick.
I do. And I love my Switch. Yeah. And I think that's why I have mixed feelings about if they're going to come out with a new Switch. Because now it's okay, we have the Xbox coming out. We have the PlayStation coming out. We have the new Switch coming out. Who do I throw my money at? And, I'm hoping that it doesn't mean that everybody who has this current version of Switch is kind of pushed to the side.
Yes.
I'm hoping we still get a lot of content here, so that if we're okay, let's buy the PlayStation and then maybe upgrade later to the new Nintendo Switch. Especially Snack Daddy has this thing where he doesn't like buying a new console until it's been out for a while. So I know we won't be getting the new Switch right away, and I'm hoping they still, give some love to people who have the current Switch. But it is exciting to see that, that they're making a lot of money, and to see what they're going to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. The 4K thing is kind of the obvious one, although for me, like I've spoken about before, and if you do, you don't have to do loads of research to find out that you need to be sitting pretty close to make out the difference. I'd sooner go for a higher frame rate. But but I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't really know what else, because I was like, they're not really going to try and push more power. I can't see that being a thing. Like, that's what happened with like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One S or whatever it was. They pushed, they were 4K and they had more power and stuff like that, and they were more capable. But I don't really see that that's necessary on the Switch.
Yeah. Actually, something that the Switch does that I don't know if the Xbox and PlayStation new consoles are going to do. You have that little port where like you can put a memory card.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. Do you know if the other consoles will also have that?
I don't actually. Then that's a really interesting point. From what I heard, I believe that, and this was something that I heard a long time ago, was that the rumor was there was a patent for expansion. But I would imagine though, if the main difference, for instance, between the Xbox, the higher priced Xbox and the lower one, is one of the big differences is that one has 500 gigabytes and one has 1 terabyte, then probably not. Unless it's like a proper external hard drive. But apparently, one thing the PlayStation does have is that the SSD is going to be faster. That's
which is definitely.
Yeah. It's nice. But yeah,
I just remember back in the day having to, I think it was like with my 360, you had a separate storage unit and you like plugged it in the side. It was a big ass thing. It was like,
yeah.
And yeah, you remember that?
Yeah, I had it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want that anymore. Let me put my SD card in here.
Yeah, so you could buy, because I remember I had it was a premium. If you got the premium one, it had a hard disk drive with it already. If you got the arcade version of the 360, you had to buy a hard drive, and it clipped on the top, and it was massive. But the only thing is if we start doing memory cards, and what I'm really pleased that Nintendo did was make them SD cards, because I don't know if you remember the PSP and the PS Vita, you had to have Sony specific memory cards, and they were such a rip-off, like compared to basically the same thing that was a different brand. It's a really shady thing to do, and Nintendo haven't done that. You can buy any of all the SD, HD, micro SDs work. So, and
I love that. I want to see more game companies adopt that. I think it's great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like it just puts you in such a bad light when you do stuff like that. Like, it's just so unnecessary. Like, so, you Sony, why would you need that extra money? Like, yeah. So it's going to be an interesting time. Interesting to see what happens over holiday season. And then not to forget that obviously on the back of the Corona still happening, are we going to spend as much money this Christmas? Will it be that we spend more because actually everyone's, trying to make a big deal of Christmas because the year's been so shit that like people actually end up spending more money? We don't know, do we? It's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, Christmas will be really interesting this year, which is another reason I want to see PlayStation kind of compete on Xbox's level. There are definitely some people who are not going to be able to afford their usual Christmas spending. Absolutely. And so I really love that Xbox is doing that. I think it's a perfect time to do that. And it'll definitely help to get more consoles sold because the people who can't afford one of the bigger consoles are probably going to go for one of the smaller ones.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I remember when I was a kid, it wasn't like at Christmas. It was like, there was no set like, all right, so for Christmas you can have up to this money, but it was always around the same sort of region. I knew that if a console had literally just dropped a few weeks before, I couldn't just go and ask for that because it'd be too expensive. But like, that could be the difference in so many consoles sold. The one that's just $200 cheaper, but you're going to be able to play all the same games and they're still going to look really good. And that the younger kids are not going to be as discerning when it comes to how it looks.
I was thinking, like, if I was a kid, I wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because you'd probably think it was good at first, and then you go around your mate's house who's got the S, and it looks the same as your $200 more, console, and it's just like, oh hey, I've got this, but it looks just the same. I think that's probably what happened. I don't know. I mean, towards the end of the console's life, you might see a bigger difference when they really push in the power, but certainly not at the beginning. But as we know, they like to bring out a second version now anyway. It seems, unless this is sort of preparing for that. I don't know.
Yeah. And then the other thing is the people who, a lot of people are like, do I want this console or this console? There's always which console do I want, because they're all pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Having that smaller console, I feel like will allow more people to justify, okay, I'm going to buy the PlayStation, but I'm also going to buy the smaller version of Xbox so that I can play some of those games. Like, that's kind of nice. You can kind of mix and match your consoles, choose your price point overall. And so I do expect that more Xbox consoles are going to be sold, even just for that fact alone.
Do you think that with the release of those consoles, do you think, and given how many Switches have been sold this year, do you think that we might see a price drop on the Switch before Christmas? Because obviously, it's with how many they've sold has gone far beyond what they ever expected. So they'll have made that price point knowing, right, this is the price point, and we want to sell X. They don't aim to make money off the console, but if we can make X, they'll have gone above that now. So they're probably in a position where they could comfortably bring it down a little bit. I think what it'll be is like you'll see bundles for the $300 or whatever, rather than the console's $300. I don't know what you think, Nick.
Probably about the same. I see Matilda. She's so cute. Little fluffy butt. But yeah, I don't know if this is just me, but I've noticed that Nintendo doesn't really have a lot of sales on their super popular stuff. You never see no. On Steam, you'll see a popular game. It's like 90% off and you're like, holy crap, that's amazing. And you don't see that on the Switch because, they're really popular games. People are going to buy them. True. So I don't know that they'll really have a sale before Christmas. I think a bundle, certainly. Yeah. Maybe some limited edition something, but more likely they'll probably have like 10% off of their popular games or something. Probably,
yeah. You're right. Like the first party titles is very rare you see any kind of sale on. And if you do, you want to snap it up then. You get them occasionally on a bit more on the eShop. You might find a bit more, but not a lot. And you rarely see it on physical. Very rarely see it on physical. And in fact, if you want to buy physical, you'll normally get them, like if a lot of the online retailers that I buy from on the day, it'll be like £42, so like $50, right? And then that'll only be the pre-orders. Once it's out, it's back up to $60. And there it remains, or £50 in the UK. So normally the AAA titles are like £50 here, $60 in America. That's how it normally works. So but you can get them a bit cheaper on release, because the people are fighting to sell them, and bring traffic to their site. And then once they're out, no. Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. Yeah. So our main topic this week, I was brought into a bit of an incident. Well, I wouldn't say an incident. So this week we want to talk about ownership of Twitch channels, Discord servers, any kind of online space in which you are responsible for. I was involved in a Discord server to do with my stream. And there was a few young people that made some really homophobic comments. There was no question whether they were homophobic comments. They were definitely really bad. And one was banned. This actually happened about 6 weeks ago. One was banned and one left. So the one that's banned remains banned. He's indefinitely banned. The second one disappeared and then tried to come back like nothing had happened. So, and then people started bringing it up in the server, and it's anyway, I'd made it clear in the first instance because they weren't sure about banning the first guy. I was like, look, I think to protect protect the server, you can't have that in here. And I know I've spoken a lot before about the education and talking to people, but when it's part of a community or faction like that, a bit like if you had a business and one of your workers had said something like that, you just couldn't allow that. You couldn't have that against your company. And if you didn't do something about it, people will start to boycott you and that's where I got to be clear about this, because I know I've said in the past, it's important to talk about these things. I made it clear to them on the Versus Discord that they needed to sort it out, and they didn't. They didn't give them any sort of punishment. So I decided that I needed to leave. Obviously, was the first thing. Secondly, I absolutely had to make sure, because people know me through promoting events through that Discord. I'd regularly chat on the Discord to various people. I had to let people know that absolutely I am not affiliated with that in any way, because as we know, if something happens down the line, people will go back and they'll be like, oh, hey, you said this as well, and this wasn't sorted. Why wasn't this sorted? Oh, Joe, you were part of that. What was going on? I just had to make sure that absolutely everybody knew I was not part of that. So I shared that on Twitter. And what ensued was absolutely mind-boggling, actually. The amount of people that were more concerned about how the Versus Discord looked than what had actually been said, and what was important, was absolutely horrifying. And the way that they tried to worm their way out and backtrack out of this thing that they hadn't dealt with properly, all the mods and the owner of the channel. And then they were saying it's because I was doing it for virtue, doing it personal gain. A lot of these people in there are my viewers, so some of them will not come. I knew that beforehand, but it's either you stand up for your morals or you don't. And also, if that's the way they feel and they'd sooner defend their image than do what's right, then I don't want them there anyway. But it led me to the question of anyone over the age of 13 can make a Discord server, and they're responsible for it. Then you don't even have to be an adult to run a server. Now, I tried to put myself in the position of my friend who came out to me when he was 14. I was just nearly 14. And he'd actually told somebody just before that somebody he thought was gay as well at school. He'd messaged him and said, look, he came out to him and all this. And this guy who we thought was gay, there was no nobody used to say it to him at school. It was just one of those things that was thought, and he was left to it. He was like, oh, you've made me feel really uncomfortable. I think I'm going to have to go. That guy then proceeded to move on to tell some of the most immature people in the year about our school. And then word sort of got round. And when he pulled me round there, he told me, and then he was like, I know that some of these people know. And I'm he was really scared, really, really scared. I mean, in the end, it worked out great. And everyone received him really well, considering we were 14 years old. But the fear in his face, I will never forget. So I tried to put myself in the position of, those Discord communities, they tend to have more people of different orientations than you'd usually find, because I guess it's an easier place to sort of fit in and bond over something, right? And it's an easy place to feel included. And I thought to myself, well, if I was one of those 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and I thought I was gay, and I wasn't really that comfortable with it yet, because you're 13, 14, so you don't really know who you are anyway, let alone if you definitely are. And I just thought, what they've shown to that young man or woman or however they identify is that you can say these things and it's fine, because there's no punishment. So it brings me to the point, ultimately, who's responsible for those young people being in that server?
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think it's important to say, and I'm not by any means drawing parallel between the situation.
Yes.
I just, as an aside comment, I just want to say that it doesn't really matter what age somebody is, that this is a very terrifying thing. Any hate speech is very terrifying. We know, school shootings have been on the rise, and some of those are done by really young kids. So the age thing, like, yes, children are more prone to changing their views eventually, and maybe having some, odd views or not really inclusive views, or, But I do think it's important to note that just because they're children, it doesn't mean that they aren't necessarily dangerous. Again, I mean, when you think of school shootings, like, some of these children are 13, 14.
Exactly.
So I do think that hate speech, even though that's not the majority of cases, I think it does need to be taken very seriously, because we've seen that it doesn't really matter the age. Hate speech is very harmful and can lead to worse outcomes. And I do think that, culture is kind of having a shift, especially gaming culture right now. I think we're going through a lot of crap, and we're kind of like, okay, this doesn't work. Let's throw this out. This is shit. We don't need this anymore. And I think that's wonderful. But I do think that in our quest for inclusivity, we forget that in order to be inclusive, you have to be exclusive as well. And that sounds really weird to say, but if you're going to have an inclusive community, if you're going to say my community stands for this, which you really do have to, you have to know your values as a community. You have to say, okay, we're not for homophobic comments. Mine is not, my channel is not for homophobic comments. And in order to be inclusive toward anybody who, is part of the LGBTQIA plus community, that means you have to exclude people with hateful views. That doesn't mean you include everyone. Being inclusive does not mean everyone is included. And I think there's a lot of confusion there, when you say, this person shouldn't be here anymore. We need to take care of this. This is not aligned with our values. Yeah. It seems, some people feel like maybe it's mean or overboard, especially if they know that person or are friends with that person. But that's just part of having an inclusive and accepting community, is you have to weed that out. You have to know your values and say, okay, that doesn't align. It doesn't mean we hate you. It doesn't mean we're going to go after you with pitchforks or that you're a bad person, but, like, you can't be here.
No, yeah, that's the interesting thing is, like, I made a tweet to make this point, and all the people from that faction who had a problem with me doing it, all from the Versus, they were all from that server. Nowhere else at all. They were saying, look, you need to educate these people. I'm like, okay, so if you're so hell-bent on educating them and talking to them, which they haven't done, by the way, they claim that they spoke for hours. I was there when it was kicking off, and they spoke for about 10 minutes in the voice chat, and I don't even know what they spoke about. Why not take him out then? You can still educate, you still talk to him, because he won't, because he's not interested. He left, came back, nothing has happened. He also said that he wasn't going to change his views for a Discord server, and it wasn't until he thought he might get banned that he pleaded to get, to be allowed to stay and not get banned. And then he just said, oh yes, what I said was wrong and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, like you say, to keep it inclusive, you got to be exclusive. So if you're going to be inclusive, you just get rid of that. I'm sorry. Like, if somebody does that in your Twitch channel, if somebody comes in and does a racial slur or homophobic comment, they just gone. You just don't, and it isn't your job to sort that out, right? Maybe you got to know these people a bit more personally in the server. So maybe then you take it, you do it case by case. The comment was, there was a few comments made by this particular person. The comment was that that gay people were a danger to society, right? This is not, that's not. And then people were going, oh, you've dropped this without any context on my Twitter. And I'm like, what kind of context warrants that? There isn't. Okay, like, it's not. The only place that you could accept that would be in a script, for something to do with art, because that's the only way I can see that you could ever excuse that. There's no, and it's not only that, it's not. They decided that this was not as homophobic as the guy who they'd banned, right? That's how they justified it. It's like, whoa, hang on a minute. It's still really homophobic. And you've done, so a lot of the people in that Discord are young, and they're not the kind of people that want to speak up and like make a fuss. But also for a lot of those people in that server, I think a lot of the people in it, they are their only friends, some of them. And they've made friends in that server, so they don't want to rock the boat particularly. A lot of them just stayed out of it, which is absolutely fine. I say, that is completely up to you. I don't see them as bad people, and I've said they're still welcome in my channel. It's just I've got to make this point of not being associated with it. But the owner is an adult. Several of the mods are adults, and they were more angry at me, or they were angry about the situation that they hadn't handled, and they decided to try and take it out on me. And all they did by commenting was bring more attention to the situation. And I got a couple of tweets from one of the biggest streamers in the Mario Maker community, in Grandpoo Bear, commenting on it and saying he's extremely disappointed by, not necessarily, I think he was more disappointed, and as time went on I was the same, not even the original comments, just the comments made to try and justify this. That's the most disappointing thing, because what I thought was 2 bad eggs has turned out to be by no means the whole of the server or the majority of the server, but a lot of people in there. And I like, who is so for instance, like, it's not okay, like you say, age doesn't matter in that situation. And also from my point of view, there's a reason you got to be 13 to use the social media, right? Because you are expected to be able to stand over what you say at that age. Yes, you might say dumb stuff, but if you say dumb stuff at school, you might not get excluded in a school because you have to have your education. That's the law. If you have a job, because you can get a job when you're 13, well, you can in the UK, and if you said that in your job, you'd be gone, right? If you're 13, like, you should know extreme right from wrong. Yes, there could be something in the middle where it's like, oh, they're a bit dumb. To me, saying that gays are a menace to society is bang on one side. You can be prosecuted from the age of 10 in this country. So I'm like, and they're saying like, oh, you're having you're trying to bully kids. I'm like, what? All I wanted was the mods and the owner to do their job and stamp it out before it became massive. And guess what? It did become massive, and it wasn't just because of me, because people were talking about it in that server anyway. But ultimately, after that, one of my thoughts is like about the freedom, right? Because a lot of these people are pretty young, like 13, 14, and some of them are going to be immature, of course. Who's responsible for what they are saying? Because a lot of those TOS, if you're 13, you don't need your parents' permission to use it. So they must be responsible then, right? Because they've signed, and they've considered old enough to sign this agreement to say we can do this. But then, is it up to their parents to be watching what they are doing? And is that possible, do you think?
As far as is it possible, I don't think so. I think that kids are so much more tech savvy than their parents. Is it up to their parents to watch this stuff? I mean, yeah, I do honestly think the onus does fall on the parents with a lot of this stuff, because parents, I think, sometimes can get in the trap of, well, you can't watch your kid every second. And like, that is true. But ultimately, if they do something really bad, that's still unfortunately on you, because they are a minor, they are a kid. Yeah. But yeah, at the same time, you can't watch everything. Kids can get around a lot of stuff, even like parental controls. I know there are a lot of kids who know how to get around that. Of course. It's a really complex situation. But I do think that at the very least, the community leaders have to police their community. They have to decide what they are for and aren't for. And, the parenting can be left up to the parents, but that's still your community. You don't have to parent this child. Yeah. But you do have to say, well, that's not welcome in my community. So regardless of age, sorry, like, that's just not welcome here. And, again, we've all had kind of crummy views at some point. And I think the big thing is, you know, just that questioning of ourselves, just, okay, is this good? Is this bad? Like doing more research. You know, I've spent a lot of time in quarantine doing research on race, on transgender, just on these topics that I feel like I don't really understand enough, and checking my bias. And okay, is this an okay view? Is this a hateful view? Like, I don't know. And you kind of do that research and you check and you know, you learn more about it. And so I think that to have such a strong view and then to say, my mind's not going to be changed on that, that is a very childlike, you know, I guess marker of being a child.
Yes,
you know, children are definitely stuck in their ways. Yeah. It's a really tough situation. I do think somebody needs to maybe help them through that, but again, who, right? Like, and you wouldn't really do it in their community. I mean, you can remove somebody from a community for other people's safety and for other people to feel comfortable. And still talk to them over on the side. They don't have to be included just for you to be able to talk to them or to be able to educate them. It's a really complex situation. And again, right, like maybe their parents should talk to them about these views that they're having and say, that's really hateful. Why do you think that way? Why do you think, you know, that being homosexual is a problem when, you know, and I know a lot of people's arguments is like science or whatever, when there's a lot of species who have been proven to be homosexual. I think like 400 or something, but you know, like a lot. And you know, we'd like to think it's up to the parents, but maybe that's where they're getting these views from. And it's just a difficult conversation.
That's got to be one of the biggest problems, but there's no way that those kids are saying this in school, right? Because they would be severely reprimanded. Like these kids live in the Western world, and in fact, both the kids in question were from Europe, Western Europe. So there's no chance that they're getting away with this and saying these things in any of the schools. Certainly not under any adults watch or teachers watch or notice, because there's nowhere in Europe Western Europe where that would be like kind of acceptable. So they know that they're not doing it. They're not saying it. They're not saying it in streams. They've not said it in streams. So like they obviously thought it was okay to do in there. Now straight away, could that be down to the staff and the owner not making it clear about what was expected? Bear in mind, after the first time, these conversations had gone on, and this was in a section called Casual Talk. These conversations had gone on, and there was no real talk about, well, we can't have these conversations anymore or anything like that. There is now, but you know, it's a little bit late. A lot of people have been upset by it, you know, because when he came back and said that he wouldn't change his views for a Discord server. It wasn't me that had pulled him up or questioned him. It was somebody else. Because rightly so, they were upset by it and really failed to understand what was going on, because you know, a lot of people do feel comfortable there. But also, like, I had a lot of people saying, oh, well, I'm from the LGBT community, so, and it's like, it doesn't mean that your point of view on that particular situation can speak for everybody else in that server from the LGBTQIA community, because it doesn't. I mean, there weren't many people speaking up like that, and actually, the majority of inbox messages I got were from the LGBTQIA QIA plus community, saying that they thanked me for being an ally. But that showed to me as well, because they didn't want to do that through the threads on Twitter, and I completely understand why. But it probably goes to show as well that, you know, they don't want to make a fuss, or they don't want to be seen to make a fuss, you know, because they've probably had enough garbage that they've already dealt with, you know, through whether it's for people who thought they're friends or family, you know, or whatever, that, you know, they still wanted to keep underground, like, to thank me, which, you know, I'm still really grateful for that they did.
It's, you know, going back to our last episode. So for example, with locks and saying it's okay for some people to wear it, it's not okay for others to wear it. You know, within the Black community, you're going to have a lot of different opinions. And it's really hard, even as a community, to say, okay, this is or isn't okay. Whereas when you say, you know, being homosexual is a danger to society, that's not really like, okay, an opinion where it's like, well, some gay people are okay with this and some aren't.
No,
like, that's
not.
Clearly hate speech. We don't, I feel like, you know, and this isn't to disclude anyone from the conversation, but I feel like once it gets to hate speech, it needs shut down. It's not up for debate at that point. It's not something where you listen and try to discover how people feel about it. It's like, no, this is hate speech. This is very different. There's a clear line there where this is problematic. And I do think there's a difference between saying, okay, I don't understand this. These are my views, but I don't really understand this, versus, nope, just flat out hate speech. You know, it's just, if they had said, you know, for example, I've had somebody say to me, I'm religious. I don't really understand homosexuality. It doesn't really agree with my beliefs, but I'm okay with anybody living the way that they want to live,
exactly. And they're not going to attack.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? That's okay. That's your religious belief. I appreciate that you're, you know, it's not hate speech at that point. They're not attacking everybody. They're not trying to prevent anybody from their freedoms or living their life. And they just, you know, some people just don't understand. And that's a very different point of view from, this is absolutely my point of view. It's not changing.
And you're absolutely right. And what you normally find is the difference with the hate speech is it's based on absolutely nothing. Because there is no argument for it. There is no argument to say that a person with a certain color skin is better than the other. There isn't one. You'll never hear one, because it's not true. There are no facts or evidence for that. And that's how you can normally, that's why it's so easy to pick out. It's like saying gays are a danger to society. Why? There isn't an answer. There's no facts, there's no evidence, there's no nothing. You know, and in fact, you know what the funny thing is, like, say, if I, like, for instance, if I was going on a night out I'd probably feel safer in the LGBTQIA plus. But again, there's no evidence for me to base that on or anything like that. But just from my feeling from going out, you know, in those circles with my friends, it just that's what annoyed me more than anything. It was like, there's no answer. It's only hateful, whether it's regurgitated or whatever. You are old enough to know when you can and can't say that. I don't care what anyone says. You can say, oh, it's just a remark a kid makes. Well, maybe, but still, they're 13 years old or 14 years old. You're old enough. You're old enough and responsible enough, because you're not calling that out in school. And if you thought it was fine, you'd just be saying it all the time, wouldn't you? You'd say it to your teachers, but I can guarantee they're not doing that.
Well, and I think regardless, you know, again, like, children do change their views over time, but still the impacts of what they say, regardless of their age, regardless of if they're going to change their mind later, regardless of whether or not they understand it, that's the real terror there. Because, you know, in the LGBTQIA plus community, especially in the trans community, suicide rates are, I mean, just phenomenally high. Like, it is astronomically high. It is horrible. And so it doesn't really matter the age of the person who said it. Those comments can really upset someone, really just give them that extra little push, just really fuel their hateful feelings already towards themselves and make them feel ashamed and horrible. And ultimately, it's all of these little things, all of these little breadcrumbs. It's like, oh, it's just one comment. Well, it's all of the comments that then add up to the way that they perceive themselves, to not feeling like they fit in, to feeling like they should take their own lives. And that's horrible, you know? So is it one comment that's going to push them over the edge? Like, no, but that overall view and seeing that around, you know, and the more they see that around, the more you see people like you are wrong, the worse you're going to feel. So I think that's why it's so important as a community leader to say, okay, I can't have this here, because if somebody sees this, regardless of who said it, regardless of their age, regardless of if it's the only comment they've ever seen or one of a billion comments they've ever seen, they don't need to see it. That's not good for their mental health. And if you disagree with that, now, if you don't disagree with that as a community, I guess that's your choice and you don't have to deal with it. But I think overwhelmingly most people would say, I don't want hate speech in my server. I don't want any of that. I don't want homophobic slurs, racial slurs, whatever. And so I think you really do need to just delete the comment, deal with it, tell the person like, look, I'm sorry. I can't have you in my community because now that you've said this, like, and knowing your views, there's the really very real chance you'll make other people feel unsafe. And yeah, I think it needs to be dealt with regardless of the age of whoever said it.
Yeah, ultimately, that was my biggest issue, was that it wasn't dealt with, and it took time. Even the first one, I was having a one-on-one discussion with the owner, in the DMs. People are saying I was doing it for clout. I'd spoke 6 weeks ago, whenever it happened, like for hours. I'd given hours of my time trying to make it clear to people how so many reasons why it can't happen. Protecting people, protecting the community as a whole, and this name clean and not associated with this sort of thing. And, just forget the fact that it's just not right, which is the worst thing, and how you can make people feel. It's not just about keeping appearance, but it kind of is as well, because if you keep a good appearance, then you're doing the right thing. Now they look completely awful, and people are blaming me. Well, people from there are blaming me, but they're all starting to argue with each other inside that. And it's like, well, that's nothing to do with me. It's like, they were all so angry. And it's like, why are you so angry if you think that it's insignificant? Why are you giving me so much time if you think it's insignificant? Because if you think it's not worth talking about and you think it's insignificant, then people will surely look at what I'm saying and go, well, that means nothing. And they were going, no, it's because, you got all your community. And I was like, most of the people that had commented on it weren't from my community, because I addressed them in my own Discord server. And I said if they wanted to talk to me, they could. Most of the people from Twitter were people who'd seen it through other likes that I didn't even follow or didn't follow me in the first place. So that was a load of garbage what they were saying. And all the people that were coming in with, saying that I'd done the right thing, or that they found what had gone on disgusting. More so the fact that, not what some kids said, which it was, but like more so the fact that it just wasn't dealt with, and they were falling over themselves to try and put the blame on me, and shine the spotlight on me, and make out that it's all my fault that this has happened. And I tried to stop that, and I tried to make sure that it didn't leave the Discord server, which that was the most annoying thing. But being told that I'm doing it for clout, when a lot of these people know exactly how I am and what I stand for, that was probably the worst thing. And to be fair, the owner of the channel did write a post apologizing to me only on that point, because he said I'd done it for virtue.
Yeah. Well, it's important as an online presence, as a streamer, as a person. I mean, even if you're not online, just as a person in humanity, to make your values known.
Yeah.
And, that's part of being a good streamer, because people want to connect with you, and they can't connect with you if they don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So when you say, these are my values, this is what I stand for. I mean, standing by your values, that's wonderful. That's great, and people might say, oh, it's for clout or whatever. But I mean, the alternative is
say nothing.
I mean, yeah, say nothing. Don't put yourself out there. Don't let people know who you are, your values. Don't have a community that's founded on any values. And you kind of do, right? Just the same way as, with advertising, you have to have a target market. Well, there's a reason for that, because you're trying to speak to a group of people. Yeah. When you're streaming, you have to know your values, because you're going to want to speak to a group of people who have the same values as you. If you are like, I disagree completely with being homophobic, like none of those slurs in here.
Yeah.
You aren't going to want a bunch of people coming in saying homophobic stuff. That is your value. That's a hard line, and that has to be known. Yeah. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with calling it out and dealing with it.
Yeah. It took up like, standing my ground, especially at first, because after I made the tweet, the first people who were on top of me was just the people from the Discord server, and them and their friends trying to protect themselves. But then, later on in the day, it was like people were like saying, this is out of order. Why isn't this sorted? Good on you for standing up, which, and I said, I'm not bothered about that. I'm really not, because, if I was doing it for clout or to get bigger, I wouldn't have said it. Ultimately, I think it does help, because you're getting the right people in your channel. But, I've not lost a lot of viewers, but I've lost some, I know, like 100%. And I knew that before I sent the tweet. I knew it. but I don't care. I don't care because I don't want those people in anyway. If they want to defend that, you know, if they don't really have much an opinion and they don't have, then their values aren't completely in line with mine and they just don't say anything, then I haven't got a problem with that if that's the way that they choose to be. Because, you know, not everybody wants to do that. And we've discussed this before, like not everybody has the capacity to debate that sort of thing. And not everybody just wants to get involved. And, you know, they might have their own stuff going on in their own lives, you know, that's too much for them to deal with that. And that for me is completely fine. You don't have to agree with everything I say, but we have certain values and they shouldn't go against basic human rights, you know, which hate speech goes against basic human rights because you could say it's just words, and yeah, it's words, but it's what those words actually transcribe as, because it's not just words. It's like if you are black, you know about the years of oppression, the years and years of oppression, and the fact that, you know, these slurs have been used to keep people down, you know, to keep a race down, to hold them down. And
words are powerful. Words are so powerful. When you think about if you're with someone and they say, I love you, I mean, that is just it, right? Yeah. Like that first time you hear, I love you. In the same way as if your parents were like, I hate you, that would be crushing. I mean, words are powerful. They're not just words. Words are so much more than that. Yeah. And words are important. We couldn't have society as it is in these communities without words, without language. Language is so important. It portrays specific feelings, specific statements. I mean, even down to the little things like saying someone's a girl versus a woman. Like it's such a subtle thing.
It is, yeah.
But even that, there's differences in that. Like words, I mean, I can't understate the importance of words. And so I think to say that it's just words or it's just something someone said, I think is honestly kind of blowing it off and not acknowledging the importance of the words we use and the way that affects people mentally. Yeah. You know, and a lot of people will say, oh, well, it's just words. Like, don't take it so personally. It's not that simple. I mean, it's easy to say don't take it so personally. But then when you have all of these people using words that are negative about your way of living and your point of view and who you are as a person, you're going to internalize that. You're going to start feeling bad. Yeah. So it's not just letting it roll off your shoulders. Like you have everyone telling you you're wrong, you're bad, you're horrible. And even from a young age, I mean, I think it's so much more powerful than that.
Yeah. And that's why you've got to be so careful with the language that you use. Obviously there's a spectrum on that as well. Like we talked about earlier with like people can mess up and they really don't mean to. It can still be ignorant whether they meant to do it or not. But when people are at that end where it's like it's only meant one way. Yeah. To me that's the word, like that's, and it kind of makes me feel like, sometimes maybe, there isn't that much hope, but I always hope that people can change. Like I really do. I absolutely really do. But when people push things that far and it's it's just one thing that's said for a certain reason and it's just hate fueled, it becomes very difficult to not get emotionally involved in that and be angry. And I probably was quite angry, but I was not so angry at the individual, and that probably a lot of that down is to age, even though it's not an excuse. But like the non-reaction, like of the staff, and it went on to, people were saying all sorts, like from that community, they're making stuff up, and I would say, well, go on, how do you, no evidence of that, there's no evidence of that, and it'd be like, all these things are completely unfounded. And one of the people saying that or calling me out or they saying, oh, you're being a drama queen, you're just trying to cause drama. And I'm like, you're more concerned about drama being caused than the actual issue. So one of the guys that said that to me, I just had enough. And somebody had sent me a picture of a tweet that he'd liked, which was it's gone now. The Twitter page was called Racist Goku, and it's obviously Goku from Dragon Ball Z. Like, and I think he just used to say racial slurs. Like that was the account. And it's like, people are saying, like literally people were saying after I shared it, and I was like, can you give me, I didn't say, look, you're a racist. And I never used that word against the guy who said it, but I said, can you give this some context? Never apologized about what it was. And then I'd ask people, you know, they defend it, and I'd say, okay, so you're saying racial jokes are okay? No, and they're like, no, I'm not saying that, but it's just a dumb joke, and it's not meant that way. I was like, it's complete casual racism again, that you think is that you and your friends think is absolutely fine, you know. And this is not just actually them and their friends or whatever have an opinion. Not that I'd agree with that anyway. This is like on the internet, and people can see that you've liked that, and it's like, I was just mesmerized that these people who are supposedly like so open, you know, supposedly young and open-minded, we're defending that, you know. And it was an adult that had shared this.
Yeah.
Well, an adult now, very close to an adult then. And I'm like, there's just no excuse for that. Like, how do they think that's okay? And they were saying it's satire. I was like, there's no satire in it. Where's the context that it's satire? This isn't South Park with a whole story and underlining morals and stuff like that. It's literally a stupid account saying a slur, and that is it. That is it. And you've accepted that, and you're trying to say, you know, no, they're going, well, you're calling him a racist. I was like, I didn't say that. I said that's going to contribute to racism for sure. And you'd have to ask the question, obviously, if you were liking stuff like that, because it wouldn't even cross my mind. Like I've seen stuff that I thought was hilarious in South Park that is satire, because ultimately it reminds you of how ridiculous like some of our society is. And that's the difference when people are saying this is satire. No. Because satire is clever. Satire is like formed with loads of context and good reasoning behind it. And the ultimate goal is to mock what's actually happening. You know, to mock the people who are doing those sorts of things. Whereas this was not doing that. And again, this person's a mod on that Discord server, and I'm like, oh man, like this.
Someone would say, oh, you're being a drama queen. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about how the word feminism is so fucking hated. It's so hated. Like if you say I'm a feminist, people like immediately, you're a man hater, you're this, you're that. And it has a lot of hate surrounding it. And I actually was doing some research. I was like, why? Why does it have so much hate surrounding it? And somebody brought up the point that back in the day, feminists were called the same damn thing. They were called man haters and wrong and disgusting women who couldn't get someone, so they were angry at the world and like all of these things. But they're the reason why we have voting for females. They did something incredible. And so something I've been thinking about a lot is sometimes when you're doing something incredible and you're standing up for what's right, people will say, oh, you're nasty, you're this, you're that, you're a drama queen, whatever. And you know, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just people pushing back, I think, against somebody who has a view that's different from theirs. And I do think people with more progressive views are kind of seen as rocking the boat. And some people really don't like that. So not a fan of that judgment.
I think the feminism again, though, as well suffers from you know, an extreme minority. Again, you suffer from extreme, like you do with everything. Like in the whole BLM movement, you know, there was a minor group causing a lot of problems, you know, that not helping the situation. It's the same with the feminist thing. There's just some extreme feminists that actually they're at the point where it's like men are completely wrong and they're all at fault and they're all bad people. Most are not like that. Most just want the same. They want to be treated the same. And that's what I want for everybody. That's why I want to stamp out all this shit that is completely unnecessary. And I don't want to have to feel bad, but I don't care. And it won't stop me either. I don't want to feel bad about like calling something out that has absolutely no justification whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it needs to be called out, and since we're calling out people's bullshit, I just want to say that I do feel like, because it's always like, every movement does have this minority group that just sucks. I mean, they just suck, right? Like, I've definitely seen feminists who are like, I hate men, and I'm like, I really love Snack Daddy. Like, he's a fucking cool guy. I mean, he's awesome. I don't want to live without him. And so, every movement does have their small minority of just really shitty people. But something I find really interesting is when somebody's part of a movement, they're like, if you say, wow, there's some really shitty people in your movement, like, people must be like that. They're like, no, it's a small minority. We're not like that at all. But then when they talk about another group, they're like, oh, look at that group. They, like, that minority suddenly represents everyone. It's like that personal bias of, oh, well, my group's great and it's just a small minority. But when you look at another group, it's like, well, that's most of them. And I just think I just want to bring it up because I think it's really interesting.
No, yeah, but I think you're absolutely right in bringing that up, and it goes and it brings us back as well to that point about making sure it's clear what either your organization's goal is, or what you do, or what the rules are, or why you're doing that to have a good time. Because you could have a good feminist group who's pushing for equal rights, and then there's a few bad eggs in there that are extreme, but they end up tolerating it anyway, and then those people end up spoiling it and getting them nowhere because they're completely unreasonable and expect men to just die, basically, or whatever. It
goes back to the server, right? Like, having somebody in that server does reflect on you. Having somebody with values like that does reflect on you and your community, and that's why you need to say, no, like, yeah, we're inclusive, but that's not allowed in this space. I do think there's like that drawing of the line of, this is what we believe. I don't associate with that,
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens going forward with, obviously, I mean, I didn't share much with BLM because once I'd researched, and by the way, I don't have a problem with the ideals of the sentiment of Black Lives Matter, because I'm completely for that. But like, after we did some research, Nick, I didn't realize how far this went back, and how some of the original organizations, movements are probably not ideal or helpful to the cause. Whereas I understand completely that people were sharing the BLM thing for absolutely the right reasons. And I don't think that most people will have delved deep enough to know about the bad side of this. So I don't really have a big problem with it. But the people are that built up a lot of steam, and it, like you said before, I don't know whether it helps. I don't know how much it helps. I hope it does. I think so. I think hopefully we can at least get a bit more training for police this side of the pond and your side of the pond. If that's all that comes off it, then it's been a massive success. We can't just click our fingers and get everything to change, because it's obviously ingrained in culture. But these things, people are getting, thinking a bit more for themselves, I'd like to think. The thing that annoyed me about saying that I was doing it for virtue, it was like, some people who were arguing against it with the joke had BLM in their name, not just in their bio. And I'm like, you're telling me that I'm doing it for virtue. You've got BLM in your name, and you're trying to justify a joke racial slur. And I'm like, who's doing what? Come on, who's doing what for virtue? Like, when you were debating with people, and most of these people couldn't debate anyway, because any question they fire at me, I give them an answer. Any question I fire at them is ignored. So it's not really a debate. But it looks like you're just trying to be argumentative. And it's like, people say that and it annoys me, because it's like, oh, well, you're argumentative then. And it's like, well, no, I like to stand up for what I believe. It doesn't mean that I go around, if something's just an opinion and it's not hate and all that kind of thing. Like, it's like, oh, I'm not going to go around and say right, you're voting for the right-wing government and this needs stamping out, and I will not, because it's up to them. And that's completely different. And that would be argumentative. You can argue the points with your friends or whatever, or if something bad happens, but to me, like, to be called a drama queen and argumentative over something that's so important, they may, if they'd have been bad just from my tweet, they look 10 times worse after, with how they tried to defend it. And I left the server. I have no idea what's going on there now, but all I know is there's a load of people arguing and fighting about it. A lot of people saying they don't want to be part of it anymore. Because there was other stuff going on before, I don't know how long it's been going on for, or whether there's other serious stuff. Because I didn't see it. I probably didn't spend enough time in the server to see it. I hope that there isn't. I hope that it can be a successful server and stamp out all the hate, but they're going to need to put a lot more work in, and they're going to have to get everything straight. And then they're going to have to get the house in order to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because
and again, just because you piss some people off doesn't mean you're going in the wrong direction. You've done anything wrong. There are so many people throughout history who have done amazing, incredible things, and society just wasn't ready for it. And so they got a lot of hate for it, and it doesn't mean what they were doing is wrong. In fact, it's kind of funny because I've been thinking a lot about how I don't always put my views out there and stuff because of my social anxiety. And one of my goals is like, I'm going to put my stuff out, and I'm just going to piss a lot of people off because it's, some people are going to be like, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I don't like your values, because that's just part of living and speaking as a human being. And so I think it's great what you've done. I think it's great to speak up about this stuff. Yeah. Like, some people are going to be really upset about it, but I don't think that's an indicator of that you did the wrong thing.
I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew it was the right thing to do when I sent the tweet. I decided the night before, and I slept on it, and I gave it time. I also gave them time to because I told them what was going to happen, and they were like, "Oh, you're making a threat," and I'm like, "No, I'm just telling you, you could sort this out now." And it doesn't have to happen, but you leave me no choice, even if it's just to protect myself, even if it's just completely selfishly to protect myself, which it wasn't, but that's part of it. That is part of it. Then it's going to happen. And they're saying, well, you're making threats. It's like, not really. And like, I'm just telling you what's going to happen.
And again, you have to make your community feel safe,
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's it. My core community won't change, and they know exactly what I'm like and what I stand for.
And the people that you lost over this, I mean, they didn't have similar values.
Look, and it's really not that many people, and it's not people who are integral to the community at all. So that's no big deal for me, and I'm not going to be upset about any of that anyway, because happy with the stream. And whatever, and that's part of the reason, though, because I want to protect that as well. Because I didn't work. I've been doing this full time since for going on a year, and it's like I didn't put all that time in to for somebody to turn around like 6 months down the line and say, oh, hey, yeah, haven't you been involved with that homophobic group, and I wouldn't have had any part of that, as but that's all it takes is someone to say, oh, you're part of this group. They said I was trying to make them bad. I even said in the original tweet, this is a couple of people in an otherwise great server, which I was actually proved wrong on, because there are a lot of people. It's still not the majority of people, but there are a lot of people in there who are, I don't know what they think. I don't know whether it's just like a blind defense mechanism, because you've really poked them in the eye. You've poked them where it hurts, because you've called out something that's real. Because if I just made a tweet going, I've left the Discord server because they all just cause drama in there, I'd have got a few responses, but it wouldn't have been like that, because they'd have been like, oh, whatever, because it's not really that true. So I would have got no replies, and it wouldn't have blown up at all. But because it's like something serious, I guess that's the way it is. But I think as well, it's made me think about Definitely. And we've spoke about this before, about getting your house in order and making everything is straight with regards to rules. We've got to be careful.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I want to encourage more people who manage Discord communities, more streamers, just anybody who is in charge of any sort of community. Get your values straight, figure out what you stand for, make them known. You're gonna piss people off. That's just how it is. But the people you piss off, the people who, don't align with that, they're gonna leave. And honestly, that's a celebration right there. Like, you don't want them there anyways. In order to have an inclusive community, let them leave. That's great. That's best case scenario.
Yeah, I think I've been in a few streams before in the past as well, where I see like smaller streamers letting people getting away with stuff that they clearly don't like, and it's like it won't help you long term. But we've discussed that before anyway. Yeah, so interesting experience. I kind of like it's kind of like a nervous laugh, because it's like some of the responses, they really I wouldn't say like it upset me, but I was really disappointed, because you don't, these people that you've been talking to and that you fraternize with, it's like you don't expect that. Like, you just kind of expect better, I think, from people you've been hanging around with. And maybe you shouldn't always, maybe you should still have a bit of guard up and think, they are, I'm conversing with these people and they seem to be cool. But we still don't know them that well. So let's be sure that we're on the same page and share the same values. Absolutely.
And I think that's why I really, for the rest of the year, like, my goal is to speak up more about my values and be like, hey, this is, because like I usually, I try to get along with everyone. I really enjoy being kind to people, and that is a big value of mine. But I think when you meet someone and you don't let your values be known, that's how you end up like, oh shit, like, I'm suddenly finding out they're homophobic, right? Like, I think that when we put our values out there and say it loud and proud, and this is what I stand for and this is what I don't, I think that's really the way to build the best community, because it's like right off the bat, okay, cool. Yeah. That's what I agree with. I agree with that. I get behind that 100%. We click, we, make sense together. And so that's something that I want for myself and for more communities. Like, put your values out there big and bold and let them be known and stick by it. And
yeah, absolutely.
People who, don't align with that, just bye.
See ya.
Yeah.
Well, I think we just about covered what we want to cover here today. So thank you very much for your time again, Nic. Really a good conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And I look forward to coming back next week with something else interesting to discuss.
Absolutely.
So on that bombshell, I guess for this week, I will say goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Hey guys, Nic here. I just want to let you know that we really appreciate you tuning in, and we hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. If you'd like to see more of Nic and Joe, be sure to visit us at twitch.tv or on our Twitter and Instagram pages. The links are in the show notes. And if you'd like to join in on the discussion, send us a tweet at podcast NJP. We hope you'll continue to tune in and enjoy the podcast. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week.